Judson, did you?
Yeah, it says live.
We will be kicking it off in about 10 seconds. I'm just waiting for everybody to join. Thank you very much, everybody. All right, looks like we've got everybody on. Thank you, everybody, for joining. We've got today, we're having an AI roundtable, as I'm sure all of you know. By the way, if anybody can't hear me and you can see me moving my mouth and hands, just put something in the chat and I'll see if I can figure this out. But the goal here is to have an AI conversation, talk about AI. We're all largely in financial services, primarily in this group, or in some kind of service providing relating to AI services, or sorry, banking services. And so it's a topic that's becoming more and more relevant. There's a tons of challenges in adoption for AI. It's been a long time coming, and I know institutions are trying to figure out what the next thing to be is. So we are going to have this conversation. As you all know, we've shared some questions with you all. Those are the same questions. There's no surprises. Those are the same questions we'll be going over today. But just want to kind of jump in and do some very, very quick housekeeping pieces here. So my name's Karan. I'm a CEO of AI Vantage. I will be moderating the session, and I'll try to keep the conversation flowing, folks. We're trying to make this a very collaborative event. I mean, it's the first, like I said, of many roundtables. Thank you all for taking the time. And we do encourage participants to build on others' insights. If somebody says something that you want to add to or expand on, we'd love to hear your thoughts, on top of that too. This session is being recorded. We'll share it afterwards. Want to make sure that, again, in the spirit of collaboration and actually building a community around AI, I want to make sure that everybody has access to the content. We'll also provide LinkedIn profiles of everybody who does join so that you can interact with anybody after, especially if you hear something that means something to you. And if you prefer to opt out of that, please let me know. There's really no issues. We can drop your name before we send, but let me know by the end of the day, ideally, so I can take your name off that list. Some other housekeeping rules, so to say. We want to make it respectful. Everybody has the forum. Everybody will be allowed to talk. So, you can mute your mics, you can keep them on, but again, let's have the person who's speaking speak without interruption. Let's be courteous and considerate of all participants. Time management will be important. We are 12 people on here. Out of them, I think about 10 speakers and 10 participants. So I may just have to ask you to move on a little bit. If I jump in, you're kind of going a little bit over your time, and I will share the times just so you have a little bit of an idea. But we do want to keep the conversation flowing. Everybody has a lot to share. You'll get, and nobody's going to, we won't ask every question of everybody, but we'll keep it flowing. The one thing I will ask is if you have the option to do so. I know sometimes you don't, you may not be in a place where you can, but keep your videos on. Let's keep this engaging. I will have the screen off. This is what you're seeing on the screen will be taken off where you'll actually be able to see each other. And then there's a chat feature, like any Teams event, there's a chat feature. I'd encourage you to use it just to message me rather than having side conversations. Let's save those to later or follow up with LinkedIn after if you need to. Quick jumping into the agenda, folks. The first minute you're going to have, I'm going to go around the room, or sort of what my screen shows, I'll go around there and ask everybody to give a 1-minute introduction of themselves. And after that, we'll jump into the next round of questions. The second question is really what the biggest hurdles you've faced. That's about a 2-minute question. Some of y'all will be asked. And then have you initiated or paused any AI projects? And I say pause because we're hearing a lot of that too, is I started something and I struggled with it. So, talk about that. How do you measure AI success and validate your models that if you're doing anything work with AI? How does your organization budget for AI? So again, I've got minutes here, 3 minutes, 2 minutes. And then we want to keep it open. If there's one question or topic you'd like the group to address, we might ask just a handful of y'all as what that question might be. And again, if you have a question for the last point, you can send it to me in the chat. And again, time permitting, we'll open it up to the group. The idea again is to make it something that we're all benefiting from. So with that, I'm going to stop the sharing just so we can again start looking at each other and make this a little bit more collaborative. Don't worry about the questions. I have them written down right here, and I will read them out to you as then when we get to that point. Perfect. Judson, you can see me okay? All right. So, all right, folks. Thank you very much again for joining. I'm going to kind of jump into the first question, really, which is just let's give a quick introduction. I'll start with myself. Like I mentioned, my name's Karan Bala. I've been in mid and small size. I started my career in Capital One, but mid and small size FIs really for the last 25 years. I run an AI company now. I'm part of an AI cohort actually recently. Also, our company is where we're working with. There's a handful of entrepreneurs, and we are looking to. Thank you for enabling video there, folks. And I can add. I think it's. There you go. Yeah. Sorry.
Got you.
Oh, brilliant. It's great when
There's this
technology
new
works, right?
toggle on Teams to allow people in the middle. It's interesting.
Yeah, I see that. There's a little toggle button. This is the first time we're using Teams. We've been using Zoom for all of these things. So anyway, so yeah, I've been running. I'm part of an AI cohort now with that's been organized actually by a couple of Harvard professors, trying to find a way to figure out how AI and what we do is personalization in AI, how that can be a more relevant part of the industry because that's the way things are headed. Personally, I believe that hyper personalization is the future of the industry. So that's my introduction. I'm going to pass it on to Nate. Nate, please feel free to introduce yourself.
Hey everyone, I'm Nate Wensoff, AVP of product management here at Trellens for our analytics platform. So we work with credit unions throughout the U.S. We're 100% dedicated to credit unions. Our approach to AI is really how can we scale AI for credit unions? As some of you on the call might be aware, credit unions have very small budgets, and we want to bring AI to the masses for them. So how do we scale it for them? And then internally, how do we use it to make our processes better? How are we selling to credit unions? How do we interact with clients? So that's kind of the high level, quick intro here. So excited to be here and hear more from you all.
Thanks a bunch. Darren, do you want to go next? I see a VT hat. I'm a fellow Hokie as well, so this is really nice. I think we've got another Hokie on too. Judson's a Hokie as well.
Uh-oh. Whole bunch of them. All right. So, yeah, as I mentioned, I'm Darren Dickinson. Been in financial services, primarily banking, moved over to credit union space in '07, about 30 years now. So, a lot of experience. Last role, I was a CTO for a credit union QSO. I left there at the beginning of the year. Have been consulting, off and on over the last, I guess, 10 years or 15 years after we had a company that was acquired by JP Morgan Chase. So in terms of AI, I started in AI for residential real estate back in 2014, 15, I guess. Um, Really early, a lot of challenges that, it was basically around replacing agents, and that really went over really well. So we struggled trying to get adoption in that space. But after that, I started in Minnesota, where I live, an AI meetup, and was sponsored by IBM. Ran that for about 5 years up until COVID hit. So look forward to
Thanks so
learning
much.
from you guys.
Thomas, welcome to the forum. Love to hear your introduction as well.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Thomas Domain, and I'm with the Labor Credit Union. We're here based out of DC in the DMV market. I've been in credit unions almost 20 years. Been the CEO here at Labor for 5, and we're very much considered a small credit union, about 130 million in assets, so really towards the smaller side of the scale. Our approach to AI is we're doing a lot of learning right now. We're really trying to find the right way to integrate it. and Nate talked about, some of our budgets. That's a huge constraint for us, as well as some of the regulatory obstacles we have to navigate. But really, how I want to use it, I really want to use it to help streamline our member interactions. Just a lot of provide a lot more self-service type options. I just think that credit unions, they have historically lived on this idea of more personal interactions with members, but I think that definition of personal interaction has really shifted as younger generations have come of age, because they don't necessarily want to interact with a person like this. They just want something that's tailored to them, but they're very much more comfortable or well versed in the digital engagement. So we want to find what the best way is to meet their expectations and provide them with that service.
Well, and Thomas, you'll appreciate this. We actually have a handful of credit unions on the call too. So there's a couple of other institutions here too. By the way, I'm also local too. I'm in Northern Virginia. So I don't know if you're in the office or not, but I know a lot of us got snowed in yesterday, over all day yesterday. So
yeah, I got a bunch of snow here. I normally work remote from home. Our one office is in a government building, and I try to stay away from that.
Gotcha.
More recently, but yeah.
All right. John, you're on mute.
There had to be someone do it, so John Chapman, founder, principal engineer for Intellectual Dimensions, data architect, and DBA. Been in the credit union space for about 30 some odd years. Been doing professional data warehousing and business intelligence work exclusively in the credit union industry for almost 25 years. That's kind of our area of expertise, and much like Nate, provides solutions within the credit union industry for providing analytical tools. And kind of my goal today is just to understand what everybody's talking about AI. We've had lots of conversations about bolting AI on the top of our data warehouse and BI solutions. Just kind of looking to see for some direction what the tools are and like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I just had a conversation with a large credit union who said that, oh no, we've decided we're not going to do AI for a little while. And I was like, well, you're a large credit union. I mean, this is you're probably going to face bigger problems if you don't start it. Krish, pass it to you, please. You're on mute too. Yeah, no, you're unmuted there.
Yes. Hi. Good morning. Good afternoon. My name is Krish Karapat. Hope you can still hear me.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. I'm a senior vice president at Epsilon, a data-driven technology and services company, primarily in the marketing technology space. And we are part of Publicis Group, the world's largest marketing and communication group. And Epsilon provides end-to-end customer acquisition and retention solutions while enabling personalization at scale for our clients. So I'm not part of the standard financial services industry that's represented here. It's like we focus mostly on our marketing. So as we all know, marketing is one of the areas that has been profoundly affected by AI, right? And our parent company, Publicis Group, has recognized this shift and has made AI a top priority, committing significant investments in the space. So we have been leveraging predictive AI for over a decade and are amongst the early adopters of generative AI. So we're actively partnering with OpenAI, Mistral, and all the three hyperscalers to push the boundaries of what Gen AI can do in the marketing technology space.
And Krish, for the benefit of the group, the size and scale of Epsilon. I mean, I obviously worked with them back at my Capital One days, but if you can just talk a little bit about the size of the company.
Yeah, so Epsilon by itself is around 10,000 people, a company, and we don't really report our revenue independently because it's part of Publicis Group. Publicis Group is around a $20 billion.
So large holders of data, a lot of consumer data, and obviously a lot of intelligence coming out of Epsilon. Prashant, would love to pass it to you.
Thanks. My name's Prashant. With Trailhead Credit Union out in Portland, Oregon. I'm currently their CFO. Pretty new to the credit union space. I came from indirect channels for T-Mobile for about 15 odd years. But you know, we're a CDFI Trailhead, so kind of attracted me to make sure that, you know, giving back type of mentality. We are leveraging currently AI for lending because we're a CDFI requirements. We need to lend a little bit deeper down the credit spectrum. So we've been using Zest AI for 2 years now. My hope is from these calls is just really, I mean, we're also pretty small. We're at about $170 million in asset size. So we are constrained by budget. So how do we make sure that we optimize usage? And then unfortunately, we are also, I think there's a barrier within the staff to get into technology. So
Yeah.
some of the obstacles there we'll continue to face. But I mean, if we don't, we'll kind of fold under. So just making sure we're into the, at least understanding it and how do we proceed future. That's where I'm trying to get strategic knowledge based on.
We used to say that
Thank you.
about big data 10 years ago, right? We used to say if you don't start embracing data, you're going to go under. And I think the institutions that, as we've seen in the last 10, 12 years that have been around, have been ones that have kind of held on and done more with the information. So you're spot on. It's a tech that's here to stay. We're not getting rid of it. So you might as well figure out how to work with it. We have a few folks that are not on video, but I know they're very, very strong contributors. Sarah, can I pass it to you? Are you there? Can we get an introduction? She represents a larger credit union. So I did find out, just real quick, Sarah, sorry, that we can only have 7 videos on. So I'm actually going to put mine off, Sarah, so we can get you on. Oh, Nate
I feel like you,
sacrificed.
I was gonna say, I think you just made that up, Kron.
For the team.
Can you see me?
Yes.
You gotta get added. Yeah, there you go.
All right. Hello, I'm Sarah. I'm with Green State Credit Union out of Iowa. We're about 12 billion. I've been with the credit union about 13 years, and I oversee all of our data and development teams. So from data architecture, centralized analytics, currently outsourced data science, and then our API development, our core programming. So both ends of that spectrum. Similar to a lot of people on the call, we're still exploring governance and how we strategically want to deploy. So not yet defined. We're very much taking an approach of human plus AI. And so that's the communication with staff and how do we ideate and brainstorm so that these tools are supplementing and making our staff more efficient. For my team specifically, I am pushing AI down their throats, probably more than they care to. I am very into a lot of the podcasts and all of the information coming out on AI. And so supplying them with tools to help make them more efficient. If you're not using Claude, if your teams are not using Claude yet, Google Claude, you should be. It's an AI tool specifically geared toward development, and it does a really good job. So pushing that out on my teams. As an organization, we have deployed Copilot. We are really on the tail end of kind of a beta deployment, and that will be going live to the masses here over the next couple of weeks. And then outside of that, really just trying to identify solid use cases to put a hypothesis to those use cases, deploy, test, and then continue to iterate. But nothing live that I can report.
Well, I actually want to pick up on the next question with you. I'm going to skip over challenges because I think in a lot of the introductions we've gotten the challenges in there, so I want to keep it moving. But even though you haven't live deployed, I mean, you said, you know, you're pushing AI down the team's throat. I mean, I've known you long enough to know that something must be happening at you know, at Green State. So maybe you can give us an example of you know, beyond the Copilot example, something. What you mentioned, Claude. Like, what are y'all doing with Claude, for example?
So nothing in app development yet, and that's where I'm really letting them know that this is a tool. So if they have rough ideation around what they want to be able to do, I don't know if you guys know about this. I was on this thing for like 4 hours in the middle of the night last night, but like Replit, it will put together an application for you in minutes. And so if we have an idea, throw it out there fine tune a little bit, and it's a really quick POC without having to spend so much time in the code. And then you can pick it apart and really start to enhance. That's one example, coming from a dev space. But even, if you're querying with SQL, if you're writing DAX, if you're writing R, to be able to take what you've written and get help with making it more efficient, or debugging, using AI for that. So much more in the development space, using it as an efficiency tool, and not so much I have ideas for actual implementation, but nothing that we've started kind of
Okay.
hands on the keys yet with.
No, absolutely. I also apologize. I did miss Eris because I know Eris is online. Eris has also got years of experience working at credit unions and providers and vendors. Eris, can you maybe introduce yourself? And I apologize for that.
Oh, no worries at all. No worries at all. Again, I'm a senior executive, speaker, author with 25 years plus experience leading digital transformation and money movement in the credit industry. Recently, I started my own firm as well, focusing on leadership and helping organizations push the envelope on digital evolution. I pretty much advise credit unions on leadership evolution in the age of AI and how we can go from a project valuation side of it, help them, evaluate in terms of concrete business metrics like profits and savings instead of just focusing on the technical metrics. And on the other side is on the AI impact, because it's one of those where just like in the 2000s, the sky was falling down. It's the end of the world because AI is coming. So I try to kind of ease the pain from that end of it. And this is not my saying, but one of the webinars that I've been on, one of the CEOs had said that focusing on improving productivity, when we become more productive, we make more money, and when we make more money, we expand and hire more people. So the fear is not really humans versus AI, but humans using AI. So with respect to people worried about losing their job to AI, worry about someone who uses AI taking your job. So that's the focus that I'm trying to bring into the credit industry. And also, Karan, I don't know if you knew or not, but I work with Nate at Trelance as well, putting together the payment dashboard.
Absolutely. I did not know you're working with him on that, but it makes sense. It's a logical fit. It's interesting you mentioned the people hiring part. So that's, as mentioned, we're part of this cohort that's trying to figure out how AI is going to impact financial services and hyper-personalization. One of the things they're talking about more and more is when I make a budgeting decision for next year, I may have previously budgeted, I don't know, I need increase of, say, 3 staff. But in the future, I can see that being, I want 2. So you're still increasing your staff force, but I'm also leveraging that budget for enhancing what the tools that this person, because the effectiveness and the output that these other 2 people can do with an AI tool might be more than 3 would have done by themselves. So that's sort of a little bit of the plan out there. And I'm going to pass it over to Nate because you mentioned Nate, and Nate, I know at Trellis you guys are doing a ton of work. Do you want to talk real quick about a project that you guys have either stalled or active, or what's something that you all are doing at Trellis?
Sure. I mean, from an internal perspective, because I can definitely talk about some of the products that we're offering to the credit unions, but from an internal company perspective, one of the recent projects that we've just started is actually using the 5,300 call report data for the entire credit union industry, and then leveraging AI on that to look at all sorts of different insights. So as Aris has joined the team, we've hired a group of strategic consultants, and some were already at Trellance, but they help us to make sure that that AI model is actually getting the right insights. So not just because you have a high delinquency, that's bad, right? It might be high delinquency, but a lot of income, and you're lending to the right people, right? So it's helping us to really kind of hone in on what are the credit union's challenges and opportunities. So obviously that can help us with selling to credit unions that don't have our services yet. It can help us with account management, the credit unions that are already using some of our products, but not other products. So that's been very cool to see, because you can look at a credit union, you can scan through their 5,300 call report and get some assumptions or insights. But now with the strategic consultants, I think AI and humans, that we're kind of on this topic already, you can't just put AI on top of 5300 and say go, right? You have to teach it, all the new acronyms that are coming out now, like the RAG and prompt engineering and all of that. We're doing a lot of that on that project right now, and it's really helping to kind of make us a lot more efficient than kind of fishing in the dark, so to say.
Everybody feels like, at least like my kids, right? You can put something into Chat GPT and it immediately gives you an answer. And I feel like, everybody thinks I can just do that for everything, not realizing that whole prompt engineering and actually a lot of the training of these models that go into it. Krish, can I ask you for a little thought about what Epsilon's doing with this? And then I'll make sure I sort of pull in some of the other folks for the next question.
Yeah, great point. I think some of the points that Nate and Sarah mentioned about leveraging models and training them effectively. As you may know, I think as Karen, you mentioned, right, Epsilon is primarily deals with data. So we have an identity graph of over 250 million individuals in the United States with over thousands of attributes, demographic, psychographic, and behavioral attributes. And we deal with people data. So we have built models on top of this huge data set to derive insights that are actionable for marketing and other communication purposes. So there are two aspects of AI, right? Like there's the predictive aspect of it, right? Defining, okay, who, for example, primarily from a marketing perspective, which audience would react positively to a specific message? Who do we need to target with this specific message? That's primarily falls under the predictive side of things. And what that message is, right? From a creative perspective, the content perspective, that is the generative aspect of it. So we are trying both, and our learning has been it's an interesting journey, right? So we when we started working with this, every team within the organization wanted to play with LLM, and actually they had their own pet LLM projects within the organization. Then we started realizing that it is resulting in a huge cost for us, right? Every API call they make, we are getting charged. So we had to actually put in governance on top of it, make sure that we identified the right areas to focus our effort on. So.
Love it. I love it. I do want to take a little bit of a sort of a shift there. You talk about success measures. Darren, I mean, you've been CIO at a large QSO for a while. When you were thinking about AI, or if your mindset, even if thinking beyond that, how do you measure effectiveness? You've done that on technology projects. How do you bring that to the AI space? How does somebody know that this is a good ROI and something that's so new?
Yeah, I think, we in the QSO, we looked at a couple different areas, right? Which was credit underwriting. I think there's some interesting models out there where we could go deeper into some of the risk rating. So I think that, that's part of looking at some of the value is how deep can we take it and still get value out of it. And I think, and I've been a proponent of this a long time, and I'm not saying this because, Karan, you host this, is I think asset gathering is going to be a huge opportunity, right? I think that the companies that do asset gathering really well and can personalize their messaging will outrun and probably in the long term put some of the smaller ones that can't compete or are too far behind out of business, right? Meaning, I told the Federal Reserve this probably 5 years ago, and I think they rolled their eyes when I said it, is that I think we're going to lose, a substantial portion of financial institutions, upwards of probably 30 to 40% just because of the ability to gather efficient AI or efficient asset gathering, right? So this is an interesting deal.
I know. Where did that come from? It wasn't me.
The other
This is
way,
cool.
the other place that I really think that there's a lot of opportunity is in the operational side, right? Using the agents to do processing now. You probably can replace, a substantial portion or at least utilize them better, folks, right? So I think that if you're looking at kind of benefits and cost justification, it's, where we're going to get those hard dollars, increase in assets, operational efficiency, better credit underwriting.
Yeah. I think there's so much more to it than just the way it sort of comes off in the beginning too. I mean, the ROI question continues to be as I mean, John, I'm sure you've been in the same as selling to a credit union. You get asked the ROI question. So we offer, AI consulting as an offering right now, right? And the questions are, what's the ROI on it? And I'm like, well, I can tell you about a few projects that have happened, but the verdict's still out. What do you run into in this case?
It kind of goes back. It's been mentioned a couple of times. It's the buy-in and the sophistication of the organization. So, a lot of times, we're dealing with credit unions that their understanding and application of data is weak. You've got some that are a little more sophisticated. You got some that are a little more sophisticated, but most often it's an evolutionary path. And so, from our side, the challenge is that the conversation is switched, where everybody's talking about the end game and not the infrastructure. And so, you end up with this whiz-bang conversation in the absence of architecture or infrastructure. So trying to articulate ROA from there and then fold in the ROI on the front side. What is the investment to get there? There was a credit union we were dealing with a couple of weeks ago that they're all hot for AI. That's where they're going to start. The management team won't discuss anything else. The board won't discuss anything else. But they have a data governance problem. They got 15 different data sources. The vendors control most of that data. They have an access problem to that. So then the evolution, how do you articulate a moving ROI, moving ROA through that in the absence of, I can get you to ROI, I can get you the ROI that you want, but you're going to have to spend $1 million first. And, I'll get you there in 3 years. And so that's been, from where we are, the implementations in the credit union space is that evaluate the sophistication of the organization, the ability to manage and own and control their own data, and then understand what are the applications after that. Is this analytical? Is it strategic? Is it automation? That's really been the big deal in this space.
I'm going to kind of try to bit of circle back, but I'm going to Thomas. I mean, you're the credit union. I mean, this is, how do you prepare for somebody like John coming in? What are the challenges that you're facing to even embark on this journey? Especially, you mentioned you started off by saying I'm a smaller credit union. So I'm
Yeah.
just, that's even adds to the complexity. And after I'm going to ask Judson because he's a student in data analytics, and I want to get his perspective. After you, please, Thomas.
Yeah, I think John really touched on a lot of it. Like I said, one of our biggest challenges is going to be budgets, right? It's just how much money can we allocate towards the R&D of even the consulting work or the implementation of programs. But even I think even beyond that, let's say I could afford John to come in and do the consulting and he could tell us, so here's the roadmap.
Yeah.
It's then having the resources to actually implement and build that road, right? I mean, that's a challenge, and it's not a hard sell in that. I mean, it's the data speaks for itself, and it's and I think we're fortunate. We have great data, and we can run the data ourselves. The challenge for us then is, okay, I need resources to do something with that data, or I need resources to do something with the work that John could advise us on. And so it's not a lack of understanding the value. It's not a lack of understanding how to use it. It's really more a lack of being able to actually the capacity to implement the ideas. That's just a big challenge for us as a small organization.
So even if you spend the initial bucks to get people in to do that roadmaps, it's how do I budget, talent, and the resources really behind kind of. I know, Prashant, I'm gonna see if you're still on there, but I know you're off the camera, but maybe you can give your perspective of what are some of the challenges you're facing. In really, it's not only a budgeting question, but just beyond that is it an all hands on deck? Everybody learn AI. What are y'all doing to start doing more of it or some of it?
I think, yeah, I would definitely second Thomas's thought on capacity to implement. Because I mean, I can speak to the Zest AI. Like, we're 2 years in, but it took us a year just to even understand what was going on and really like utilize it to where we wanted it to, or not even get to that point, but we understood where we can go next. So that's a pretty high expense. So like we had the resources to go through that process, but it was just inefficiency of looking at the internal capacity to implement it. We thought we could, but as a small organization, a lot of us are wearing multiple hats. So the capacity use of it definitely was a big obstacle for us. And it's been a learning project, but moving forward, it's the same. Like, I mean, we know it's a necessity, but then how do we build capacity internally to make sure that we can implement something like so? That's the biggest thing. It's like just figuring out how to, and then engaging people. I think there was a little bit more hesitancy than what people like the frontline staff in utilizing Zest. So that was also a learning experience in coaching people to understand what it is and moving it along. So yeah, I feel like capacity is a huge problem. Like first I thought ROI and like budget was going to be a problem, and then we're like, oh, we can afford it. But then this became a huge, much larger problem than what the budget was.
And I see a couple of hands, so I'll come to them in a second. But I do want to kind of push it back to Judson a little bit. One of the problems, I mean, capacity might be is built on the capacity question. Is like, do you need new talent for AI? Do you need to retrain? I mean, how do you? And so this is coming back to the sentiment, I suppose. Judson, and maybe you can do a real quick intro. I know we didn't do that, and then get into the space of what the youth of today is thinking about this and how are they entering the workforce with this.
Yeah, so I'll do a quick intro first. My name's Judson Murray. I am currently pursuing a master's. I'm getting my master's from the University of Central Florida in data analytics, and I'm really interested in machine learning, GPU computing, and practical implementations of AI. I'm really interested to hear what everyone is saying today for actually how they're developing practical solutions. From my perspective, I would say people in my sort of generation and the people I'm in class with and things like that, our approach is what we're thinking about is how do you go from theory to a practical solution? There's a lot, because AI is such an emerging field, there's a lot of theoretically possible things that you could do with AI. And there's a lot of sort of red tape to cut through and how you actually spend the time to understand that, and then the bridge between that and actually having a practical solution that will benefit or solve a gain or a pain for your customers. So I think understanding theory is a big part of it. So I would be curious to see, like, is there a method that people use when they think of, if as a small company maybe, or as you're starting out and you have an idea for a solution, how would you go about? Is there a method that you've used that would allow you to efficiently sort of cut through that red tape and go from theory to an actual practical solution quickly or efficiently? Or is it more of the case where you have an idea and you don't necessarily know until you implement it and try it?
Well, we had two questions. Eris, and Eris is also in the sort of leadership and consulting space. So I'll push it to him and then come back to you, John. Eris, did you want to maybe take a stab at Judson's question about theory to practical? I mean, this is not,
Yeah.
we're not in the world of IT, right? Where there were so many projects out there. This is organizations are themselves figuring out. So how does somebody who's entering the space get into it?
So, I mean, when I talk to an organization about AI, I always try to break it down as much as possible, because I think everybody's first reaction is, I'm going to go in AI and do everything for my organization. Everything's going to get changed and everything's going to go upside down immediately. And yeah. And then that's from there you go into oh my God, the sky's falling down. The staff is panicking, leadership's panicking. So I try to calibrate them and I say, hey, get back to reality here, okay? What is your priority? And that's where it comes where I say, what's the impact that you want to resolve? What exactly are you trying to achieve? Let's take it one step at a time and start with the simple stuff. I think Sarah mentioned, the Copilot, the Claude. Let's start with those easy ones. Let's get your team adapted to that. Let them understand how it works. How can they help them? And then start going to the next big project. But a lot of time, credit unions, for example, you go in there and they want to turn the entire credit union upside down and make it an autonomous AI environment. And it just doesn't work that way. You got to bring them reality one at a time. And I always establish the monetary value of these projects before and after. So that's where you can budget them small pieces at a time instead of approaching it as a global approach for the entire credit union. Hopefully that answers the question.
It's kind of like your Google News. You click on an article, and if you click on an article about AI, the next 6 articles are about AI, and you click on one of them, like all of a sudden you're only reading AI articles, and you think you're the most sophisticated tool out there, and then you're like, oh my God, I'm heavily under delivering. So I don't know, John.
And the fear, by the way, Karan, just FYI, sorry. And the biggest fear of why there's a fear for that is because you look at it, electricity, it took us about 37 years to reach mass adoption. Personal computers, 23 years. Internet, 17 years. ChatGPT, 10 months. So everybody understands what it could accomplish, but because of that, that puts the fear in our mind that's saying, oh my God. And also consultants. I mean, we're fear mongers, fear it or manage it. The more you're afraid of it, the more you're going to hire me. So that's something else that we have against AI that's working.
Right. The brutal truth from Eris. There you go. John, pass it to you.
Yeah, so a couple of really good points that came up here. I'm going to start with the end and go back to Eris. What Eris said is that, within the financial institution, it's easy to spend a lot of money on, cool stuff. But in the end, we do have some responsibility. And so part of it is what's the pain? What's the implementation? Nobody's going to find, Nate and I can agree on this. We're never going to find a credit union customer that's going to rise $500,000 to spend 8 months to implement every single AI solution they need. So at some point we have to say, what's your problem? Do you have a growth problem? Do you have a retention problem? Do you have a defection problem, a runoff problem? Do you have an income problem, a capital problem? And that's really where we need to start. And so there's a lot of topics we can do in here. We've had a lot of discussions on our side about using AI to come up with profit models for certificates. Can I use AI to price loans? Can I use AI to price certificates? Can I use AI to predict runoff? Those are all great things, but the credit union doesn't have those problems. We shouldn't start there. And then going back to something that somebody else said just a minute ago when I first raised my hand, in this industry, there is a whole new problem coming along that not everybody's aware of. Nate knows about it, and that is a lot of the core vendors are starting to figure out there's a lot of money in data. And so in the old days, we just, we've made a business out of building data warehouses, connecting these databases, going off and have fun. But now they're restricting and holding access. We have a credit union that's converting from a Fortune 500 Orange Core system and going to another Orange Core system, but they're going from in-house to hosted. So they're 6 to 9 months in their deconversion process. And so now we're trying to do data validation against the two systems so we can do the merger hoopy thing, only them to find out that as a hosted customer of this core, they have to pay for access to that Oracle database. They don't get to go just connect to it anymore. Credit card companies are the worst of this. And so from a consumer perspective, what do you have access to? And from a budgeting perspective, what are these vendors going to charge you for access to your own data? That's the biggest challenge I see in this space to having a conversation about AI. It's the access to the data, and are the vendors going to prevent me to have access to the data because they want to sell their products? And that's a big challenge.
And before I pass to Sarah, I'll say, it's funny because I think that's one of the things I know, Darren, you hinted on very strongly is like, data as an asset. So we figure out what your asset pool is going to be and data. And obviously, Epsilon has figured it out because that's the big part of it is like, and it seems to have figured out that data has been an asset for a while there. Sarah, do you want to sort of, I just see your hand up there. Yeah.
I'm just curious, and this is maybe more of a question for the group, but as far as what you're seeing for that implementation, my roadmap really didn't consider internal development when it comes to these models, but leveraging other robust models, and avoiding that cost of infrastructure, the cost of compute, and really just connecting via API. Is that a lot of what you're seeing, what you're implementing within your solutions, or what do you foresee over the next few years as far as development goes?
I see, Thomas, you put your hand up. Did you want to answer?
Yeah, I'll take that. I just think I hate to harp back on the budget thing. We just don't have. Well, we don't have the budget, but also we don't have the knowledge to develop things in house.
Right.
And so, our approach is purely like scouring the market and what can we plug into our other systems that already exist. The people have mentioned AI and some other, Glia's out there, Eltropy's out there. we're more likely to lean into those established products that we can plug into our systems, because even for me to go out and hire the talent that would have the expertise to develop something in-house would be
Right.
that's a non-starter.
Yeah.
And the cost of failure. And the cost of failure is
Yeah.
pretty high, and time lost
Yeah.
and resource lost. Nate, I saw you were kind of about to say something, and I felt like I, jumped in there, but go ahead.
Oh no, I was just agreeing with what Thomas was saying about, the budgets. And I think the term AI can kind of scare credit unions and other institutions, right? But we've been doing AI for a lot longer than it's been called AI, right? We used to call it things like machine learning. A lot of credit
Yeah.
unions are using things like the next best product model that you're very well familiar with, Karan. Like, I think education about what is AI before we just kind of say we want AI. So I think you hit it on the head, John, that we work backwards from the use case. So we have the next best product as one of our, products. We just added OpenAI scripting onto it as well, so that it will not only just tell you the next best product, it will give you a script to work with the member on. So I think that's one of the things where we can work with the credit union to make it more credit union specific and work backwards from the use case, not just saying you need some AI and go plug it in. It's like, no, you need to engage your members more and sell more products or more services or engage them more. How can AI kind of help with that, right? And then we can talk about all the LLM. I think the challenge now has become AI just equals LLM. That's what I've noticed in the last like 6 months after ChatGPT kind of took over the world, right? When people say AI, they just think it's only the LLM, the models. Like, it's much, much deeper than that. And credit unions have been dabbling in various forms of AI for how long, Karan? Maybe 10 plus years if you include some of the machine learning and some of the other, yeah. So we've been doing it for a while. So I think sometimes you get intimidated and you think it's a giant price tag. It really shouldn't be. You can start small. You can start in incremental, kind of doses of AI, right? So that was kind of where I was agreeing. Like, yeah, spot on, Thomas. We don't have the budget to kind of hire 5 people to build an entire LLM that's specific for a chatbot for your credit union. But you can start with one employee who has an interest in an incremental AI. And nowadays you don't have to go out and buy servers. You can do trials of certain licenses. You can do the free version to start with. So it's a whole new world with the AI that we can now kind of experiment with a lot easier than it was before, where you had to buy $100,000 servers and to compute all that data.
Chris, just before I pass it to you, I remember when I started talking to credit unions 12, 13 years ago about data analytics, and it would be all the CEOs, and Tom, that was not that different from what you're feeling now, is there'd be this real excitement for about 10 seconds, maybe 20, and then it would be like, wait a minute, that's just so much going on. Like, it's a little bit daunting. I don't know what to start, where to. And so I think that problem is right back there with AI. It's like you said, budgets, all these things come together. But it does start making sense. I mean, Zest is one. You said, Leah, that figuring out the problems that you're trying to solve for as sort of a first thing, like prioritizing these are the challenges, and I know AI has solutions for them, or there are solutions out there for it, be that established vendors or self-built. Chris, can I pass it to you there?
Yeah. So I just wanted to second what Nate was saying, and also Sarah was alluding to, right? In terms of the approach for selecting the AI tool, you don't have to invest a lot of money upfront, right? You can start simple. And the VC funding in the space has made it a lot cheaper for all of us to experiment. So you can try with, say, a couple of offerings that you feel will address the use case. So start with the use case, you identify what AI tool would address that use case, try that out, and then you realize that really, if you were to actually try it roll it out to production, or like support a large user base, or like large volume of API calls, you may have to switch to a different product. That is something you need to keep in mind, because the cost of AI is dropping rapidly, right? Like, so as Sam Altman recently said, right, AI inference cost will drop 10x every year. So it'll keep on dropping. So you just have to be on the lookout for the cheaper options. So keep that in mind. We have realized that over the last 2 years, right? We started off spending a lot of money and then started switching out like some of the expensive closed source LLMs with cheaper open source LLMs. It has resulted in tremendous cost savings for us.
I'm going to ask Darren a question after this, but just before we did, I remember that when I got into this space in the credit union world, I'd come from the banking world, and I was like, whoa, man, credit unions are just, 5, 10 years behind what banks do. And I got a very humbling reality check very quickly. And what that was when I looked at some of the numbers, because I'm a data guy too. Credit unions are large adopters of fintech tech. So they're actually, even though we claim we're behind on certain things and the way we act, that's just because we're risk averse. But the reality is that credit unions do try out different fintechs, give them opportunities. They invest in more and more now with all the QSOs and all these funds coming up. There is a growing acceptance. Credit unions have been supporting this fintech space, and I think AI, more and more AI opportunities similar to like Chris, what you were talking about, will start popping up. And Zest is not the only one, and there'll be a whole bunch of them. Darren, my question to you is, for as long as I've known you, you've always dabbled in something unique and different. I remember from your real estate opportunity that you were trying to build this community, and it's funny because that conversation might have been 10 years ago. I don't even know, but it was AI driven then. So, where's your head at with that now? That was an unscripted question. So,
Yeah. Okay, I'm not on mute. It's funny, and before I answer, the one thing that I want to go back to kind of Sarah that I keep thinking about, right? And this is a problem that bothers me a little bit, is that, if we used to in the credit union space, or really in financial services, some of the small organizations would use existing capabilities, right? Existing models, existing providers. And what happens, that seems almost like in this space, almost like a me too, right? In that you're gonna plot along at the same pace as the organization that you're partnering with. The challenge I have with that is what happens with the folks that take the different approach and dedicate resources because they have the resources available to them to do that. And that they run further ahead and faster, which allows them to make a difference, right? As a substantial separation between the pack and you. At some point, you just can't catch up anymore, right? So I think that's where, there's this trade-off between do I follow an existing relationship and kind of partner with everybody else and recognizing where that takes me, or do I want to try to continue at least somewhere between, I look at it like the Peloton, right? You got the front leaders in a bike race and you got the Peloton and you got these people in between. I think you're going to have that more, and the existing providers are going to be that Peloton that's going to be trying to chase, right? Now, the question you had, Karan, let me go back to that, which was, about the space, right? I mean, was that the core of it? I'm sorry.
Yeah, the core is like, you've always been sort of a forward thinker when it comes to new technology, where
Yeah.
many of us are still trying to catch up. I mean, I even put myself in that categories. What's going on with AI? How can we make it pertinent and relevant to me? But you've been one who's sort of been thinking ahead. And so again, like I said, it was unscripted. So
Yeah, I think, here's an idea that I've been pondering probably in the last few months, right? Is what I consider so I've been in crypto space since 2012. I started with Bitcoin. Is a decentralized AI model, right? So democratizing AI through the blockchain itself, right? And that I think that has an interesting kind of capability, right? And that you can put different capabilities on there. You'll be reimbursed through different crypto for, let's say, some agent that you built or something, right? And I think that, I've been a proponent, and I've kind of thought about this when, your mind doesn't focus on everything all at once, right? Meaning you don't process whole mind. You process very specialized. Frontal cortex does this, this does that. And I think what happens is that AGI, or as close as we get to AGI, will come from a lot of very specific applications, or ANI, combined together through some kind of an orchestrator. I think that's how we get to, at least in the interim, something that resembles AGI. And at that point, having that in a decentralized environment is very feasible.
Yeah, I saw Judson nodding the most, and I was like, well, this is clearly very, very emerging tech. I was like, but I completely agree with you. So we have a couple minutes more. I just want to let you know that we'll summarize. We've been recording the conversation. I mentioned that early on. So summarize to try to highlight some of the key things. In that meantime, I'd love if anybody has a question or a thought that they want to add. John, I know that you were I think you were going to say something at one point when I know. Um, Anybody have anything to add before we kind of wrap up? I know that you had a whole bunch of questions around budgeting and success metrics that we probably barely even scraped the surface on. Obviously, want to thank everybody for being there. Sarah, please.
Question just around so I don't know if anybody is familiar with Hugging Face or the concept of this app store for AI, where I do think that we're going to end up getting, as we talk about decentralizing and these very niche solutions, and likely credit unions being able to plug and play. Hey, I'm going to test this one. I'm going to use this one for this one. And especially as credit unions get more and more proficient in the API space, is that top of mind? Is that something you're discussing?
I know many folks, and us included, have been talking about a platform. To be honest with you, I'm not that familiar with Hugging Space. In fact, one of the things I'm noting down already in my head is that I need to research it. But we've been talking about platforms where become an enabler of AI across the spectrum, right? I mean, yeah, this becomes a little bit more, like you said, an app store type model, which I think, frankly, is brilliant. If we can bring in, lower, it reduces the cost of distribution significantly, but also
Right.
creates the opportunity to explore all the choices I have and match them with my priority set. If I know these are the five things what I'm struggling with, are there solutions that kind of match up to that? Yeah, absolutely be something. I mean, Nate, you're probably bobbing the head there. Is that something that you guys have worked with? And then we'll go to Thomas after that.
I was primarily moving my head to figure out if it's Hugging Space or Hugging Face.
Face.
Face,
F.
sorry, Hugging Face. Yeah.
All right. Okay, cool. They come up with all these new names. I can't keep up with all the craziness. Hugging Face. Cool. And that's all I had, Crow.
No worries. Thomas, go ahead. And after that, Eris, I'll come back to you just to wrap up.
Yeah, I just wanted to Darren mentioned something that kind of struck a mind about the separating from the pack and kind of going off from the tried and true methods. I think one of the other considerations for a lot of us in the financial services space need to navigate through is our regulators, right? And I know for the NCUA, they're pretty conservative group, and um, and I know when we have conversations with our examiners, they get very. It's on one side they say, yeah, we're supportive. We want to see AI become more adopted, but when you talk to them about specific use cases or approaches, they're really reluctant and hesitant to kind of really endorse it, right? And so I think in large part, those of us that are regulated by whether it's the NCUA or the FDIC or whomever, that's kind of a a cause for us to not be able to separate off the tried and true path, right? We have to be able to show them that this is a proven model because they don't want us going off rogue and creating our own. But I think one thing that is going to change with that is uh, as AI becomes more and more adopted, right? So I think Nate, you were talking about the different if you like there's like 27 different forms of AI, right? So um, and as it becomes more and more mainstream, then I think some of the regulatory hurdles that we have to navigate through will loosen up a little bit and allow us a little bit more freedom to operate in a more create mode versus plug and play use tried and true method approach. And we're not there yet, but I think I see signs that we're moving in that direction. That's encouraging.
Yeah, Prashant, I'm going to ask, just give you maybe a few seconds to add to that, but just real quick, last board member Rodney Hood, one of the things he talked about consistently was having a vertical in the NCUA that said, talked about like a director of analytics position that was going to focus on how analytics was being managed and regulated somewhat by NCUA. Uh, I know they hired somebody. I don't know if it ever got to fruition, but because there's been a lot of changes there, as you'd expect with the change in administration. But it seems like it's on their radar now. I don't know if it adds to more controls or actually gives more guidance and makes things a little bit easier for credit unions. That's yet to be seen. Prashant, did you want to say anything about that? And I know, guys, we're right at time. So, Prashant, anything on sort of NCUA and how you handle that? Regulators.
I haven't fortunately had the chance for an exam. It's still later on, so I'm not looking forward to that conversation. But
well, you can jot down Thomas's information. Like I said, we'll share that. So if you want to exchange notes on what to say, what not to say. Again, thank you very much, everybody. I know we're out of time. Really, really appreciate your input. This has been immensely valuable for me. Like I said, we'll share the notes. We'll share what comes out of this, and hopefully that's something that y'all can take away and maybe act on or do something with. Really appreciate your time and involvement.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
See you all.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
What do you think?